Yeah, exactly.
Uh,
You wouldn't
no
be the
one
first
wants
guest.
that, trust me.
You wouldn't be the first guest. You wouldn't be the last.
Bubba.
So,
Bubba just sits there and drinks
Yeah.
constantly. And then he'll just, if we're talking, he'll get up and walk away.
Yeah.
Like while he's on the cast.
the top quality shit talk Bubba gives me.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I'm actually surprised. Every stream so far, he's talked shit about me. It's actually really impressive.
That just means he loves you.
Yeah.
It's great. It's great.
All right, we should be live.
Maybe one of our 2 viewers will tell us.
All of the viewers. This is actually why we go live half an hour.
Live.
Yeah.
This is why we go live half an hour ahead of time.
Gotta build that audience. Yay. Thanks, Alad. Alad says we're live.
Yay.
Yay. How's the volume levels, Alad? Are they good?
Are we good people? No, we're not good people.
We're not good people. Is that a rhetorical question?
Yes. Am I hosting tonight or are you?
You are.
Okay.
I'll be too drunk, but then by 8:30 I'll be... Themes.
Themes.
So how do we want to talk about them? Do we want to talk about like the 2 or 3 themes that came out that are actually good? Or do we want to talk about the heaping piles of them that are basically unplayable trash?
Well, I think what we should do...
Just go through all of them?
No. Oh, hell no. Well, every cast is doing that right now. This theme dump is basically a giant pile of what we like to call in the industry content. And so every single cast is just literally doing that.
Except for Party Foul.
Yeah, well, Party Foul are their own cesspool. So.
I mean, we're live. Sorry, I'm not going to do it.
Oh, no.
That's okay. They don't listen to us.
Tell us how you really feel.
I had a moment of self-reflection.
Wow.
That one time you're on Party Foul?
that one time I read a Party Foul article, talked to the guys, and then made the mistake of commenting.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah, you don't do that.
Don't feed the troll. His name is Greg.
I was literally sitting. Okay, I guess we're deep diving Party Foul. Here we go.
I guess we're doing this.
Oh Christ. Will's not here and everything yet.
There was an article that came out a while ago, and it was
interesting.
Yeah, that's one way to put it.
Was that
it definitely had content in it, and it aimed to make people angry. That was its goal.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the conversation about Party Foul ended up being more vitriolic than the content that Party Foul put out. So, being a rational, reasonable person, at least I present to be online, I said, hey guys, maybe we should just, realize that like this is just people trying to get attention and not, assume the worst out of every human being online.
Yeah.
And I got to watch not only random people on the internet, but the writers of Party Foul descend into what I could only describe as the darkest dungeon.
The dark timeline?
Yeah, the darkest timeline.
Yeah, it was bad. It was real bad. And I was just like, this is a really interesting conversation.
To be watched from far away.
Yeah, it was interesting.
Are you watching
Star Trek? I don't read that anymore.
Are you watching Star Trek trailers?
This is the ad before our
channel.
the
ad before Twitch comes up.
Yeah. You're like, you are so little invested in what Matt's
Usually
saying.
That's me.
Yeah, normally you're the one who's fucked off by now. There we go.
I podcast like I play games.
No, we are still live, Legionnaires. Well,
I think unless somebody comes up and says that somebody else maybe is paying attention and.
Well, no, I'm looking at our stream right now, so I know it hasn't died.
I guess, yeah.
So let's. So, what themes do you guys think are good?
Because I can't talk about that yet.
I think Destruction Initiative is good.
I mean, I think that's accurate. I think Destruction Initiative is probably the strongest theme in the game.
I think Crick's themes are good.
Will was really crusty about
Well, he brought Bart and Galleon and all the shooting into Destruction Initiative, and that's terrible.
Yeah,
terrible time.
I scored 5 in one turn and won.
There's a reason I typically don't play gun lines anymore. But one of my weekly opponents is a Convergence player.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. Would you say gun lines are harder in 2017, Matt? Just because of the line of pretty much mandatory line of sight blocking terrain, all the shield guards.
So I actually had this conversation in our OTC team chat when I was talking about Osram in 2017 and Osram Irregulars, which I would love to wax poetically about for hours.
If Will was here, he would enjoy that.
Yeah. I think people have a misconception. Gun lines are strong because they can scalpel out heavies. It doesn't matter how much terrain is on a table. Every good gun line has tools to get around it. So mage sight, true sight, all that stuff. So like when you say like I have 7 shield guards, that's a problem. That's actually the major problem with gun lines. But luckily, most of the factions that are bringing 7 shield guards, you don't want to drop your gun line into anyways.
True.
Yeah, like you would never...
I would never drop guns into COC in general.
Yeah, exactly. Into Destruction Initiative, that just sounds silly.
Yeah.
You just drop like large amounts of Banes or Weapon Masters or anything that can touch
the
Convergence Jack.
Yeah.
I don't know about that. I mean, Double Towers is really good against Weapon Master spam, especially with like Axis. So like you walk up with your towers, you spray, you walk up with Axis, and you feed on the rest of their army so they can't charge, and then you spray them again.
Yeah, that's sort of my plan.
I don't know what Weapon Master list survives that. Like, what Weapon Master list survives like 3 spray 10s a turn for 2 turns without being able to do anything?
I think it's Banes, maybe?
If you tough a lot.
Yeah,
I mean...
And Bane Riders are what I am always worried about with the TEPs.
Yeah, Bane Riders are nasty.
Because they can come from downtown, and then it takes 2 of them for a tower to explode.
I think that there's probably a conversation around that. Crix is definitely a strong faction, and they have a huge diversity of lists. And you know, I've played a lot of games with Crix, and I've definitely won a lot based off the fact that lists that deal with infantry don't really deal with both styles of Crixian infantry, right? Like, if you're set up to deal with Ghost Fleet, you're typically not set up to deal with Dark Host or now the Satixis theme.
Yeah.
So that kind of 1 second.
Yep.
Oh, look at that! Like a real person.
Muted his mic.
Mute.
Yeah. All right. We're good.
Oh my God! So you have just done something that nobody else has ever figured out on our cast.
Mute the mic.
Nobody mutes their fucking mic like they're supposed to.
As an internet dweller, I feel quite good at muting my mic.
At least we don't make you push to talk.
Oh geez. Oh geez.
Lilac all about the caps.
No, so all I'm saying is that...
What does stonk even mean?
I think he just can't spell.
Oh, okay.
I don't think that there exists a list pair, or I don't think there exists a single list that can handle everything Crix can put on a table right now. So like that's kind of the situation in general with Crix. I've been part of plenty of discussions about this, but sure, there's some factions that can do it. Like if you have like a bucket of Electroleaps, like your Signar and your Haley 2, you can probably be okay. But there isn't very many lists that can just handle, you know, Ghost Fleet or Dark Host or like double Wraith Engine or 40 Satixis or like Scaverous Satixis and Rongai Snapjaw. Like there's just so much variance within just the same style of list. It becomes a really, really hard set of things to tech for.
Do you think Crix needs to be brought down a peg? Are they too strong?
I definitely don't agree.
No? Cool.
I think that there's some things within Crix that need like little adjustments. Like I think that I had a discussion on the Facebook group about this with Charles Soong, and there's a couple other people commenting on it. Where we kind of talked about how what made Crix strong in the WTC format was you couldn't answer typically both Dark Host and Ghost Fleet at the same time. So like Crix, when adjusted for stats, had like a 72% win rate over the WTC. And I don't think a lot of that has to do with the fact that like Denegra 1's super strong or Ghost Fleet is broken. I don't think it's about that. I think it's about how specific of tools they require. to deal with, and how that tool isn't represented or isn't needed everywhere else in the meta.
Mm-hmm.
So I think what we need to make Crix a little bit more, like, I guess, balanced would be is a meta where having infantry tools is commonplace.
Yeah.
So is the Crix nerf making everybody else's infantry better? So that we see more infantry, so we see more infantry hate, so Crix isn't the odd man out?
I think the Crix nerf is giving people tools in their theme force.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really the Crix nerf. If in your theme, like, the problem with Ghost Fleet is not every faction has an answer in their themes. So, like, if you're a Khador player and you need to play into Ghost Fleet, you're kind of just hosed. Like, you have to play out of theme, which means the rest of your matchups are really weak. So if in theory, the solution would be to allow Khador to bring the answers to Ghost Fleet while still playing in theme.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with that is the way they went to do that, allowing one mercenary and solo and unit, doesn't really do it because it's specifically mercenaries. It needs to be mercenaries and minions. First of all, it was a really weird distinction. But also, a lot of the time, it's about bringing a combination of those things, like multiple solos that allow you to, like, do work. Does that make sense?
Bilac is just wondering maybe if a return to 3-list format would help.
So I am a huge fan of the Triumvirate. George and I have talked a lot about this, actually, when late nights after murdering virtual dragons. One of the things I always talk about is if we made 3-list format standard tournament practice, like standard tournament fare, it really helps with the system, right? Like, you don't need to tech as hard one list. It's so good, but the problem is it's hard enough to get people to bring 2 separate lists that are pretty good to a tournament, like a local tournament.
Yeah.
You can't really do that. You can't really do 3 lists, right?
Well, you can give people the option. It's just almost nobody's going to take
3.
it.
Yeah.
Because, like, how many times do you go to a tournament, you look at somebody's board and you're like, that's not enough points for 2 lists. And then you realize it's 1 list with 2 casters.
Yeah.
I've seen that many a time.
Well, my normal thing at local tournaments, and I would love to touch back on this a little bit later, but the thing that usually happens at local tournaments, and this is why local tournaments are not a good indicator of success, largely because most people who attend local tournaments don't bring good pairings, or don't bring good lists, or aren't good players.
Yeah.
Some combination of those 3 is usually true. Like, they can be a really amazing player, but they don't bring any tech in their lists because they're banking on the fact that they're an amazing player to not have to tech against 90% of the field, right?
So here's what we do. We rank all the factions strongest to weakest, and as you win more tournaments in your local meta, you have to bump down the list. So if you haven't won any tournaments, you get to play Crix. But after you've won like three tournaments with Crix,
you're not allowed anymore.
You can't play Crix anymore. You have to like knock down to, like Legion
Minions.
or
it's fine.
No, you don't have to go all the way to Minions. Not right away.
So for those that don't know, the way I usually decide what I bring to local steamrollers and stuff like that is I ask myself what's going to be one of the most least popular factions there. And it's the same usually the same things I bring to game nights, stuff like that. Because giving people practice, especially in like your little local metas, against things that are not usual, really helps to grow like the knowledge base, right? Like when everyone's used to playing against Grimkin, as an example, and like they're like, oh, I have to play against Grimkin every week, and then you show up with minions or mercs, and you're like, okay, here's how mercs work, and then it not only does it change their perspective a little bit, but it shows them maybe where they were hyper focused on one style of play. Does that make sense?
Yep. I think I would really enjoy. It's not something we can often do. Thank you, Windows Defender. That's the noise we needed during the cast. I think one thing that would be really nice to do occasionally is, as the strong player in the meta, show up and see if you can play someone else's list.
Right? Oh, that'd be a really, really fun thing to do.
Because a lot of people are like, I have seen this over and over again where people are like, oh, this list is so shit, I can't make good lists. And where you're sitting there and you're like, I was scared shitless when I sat down, because if you were good, I had nothing, you know? Mm-hmm. And it would be nice to be able to show them
what you can do with that list.
What that list is capable of.
Yep.
Now, I would also be slightly worried that it'd be like projecting the view that, well, you're just shit. Right?
But usually a shit player has some kind of self-awareness about that. Like, I'd often like to see other people play my list because I think they're pretty good. It's just pilot error.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that a really big thing to talk about in terms of player skill and stuff like that would be, instead of like playing other people's lists, would be how to make people think critically about their lists and think critically about the decisions they make. This is something that I talk about a lot on game nights, and usually when people ask me like, oh, how did I do with the tournament, or like, what could I have done better, stuff like that, this is usually the first thing I talk about, is how critically approaching, like critically thinking about a game, how you're going to win that game, the decisions you need to make a lot from before even the game starts, like even just like list selection, deciding on first or second, deciding on table side, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Critically thinking about all of that is so important to just getting better and just, I don't know, having an understanding of what a bad list would even be, or like why maybe your list isn't bad, or any of those things. I think that would probably be the most important thing. Like, yeah. Like having a tournament where everyone plays a generic, like standard list. Mm-hmm. Like maybe a tournament where everyone has a pre-made list. Like you make a bunch of lists for factions, for casters, and you say everyone needs to play these same lists. And like maybe you have pre-made pairings or whatever, and you just have everyone play through them because it equals the playing field, right? Mm-hmm. And then you at the end of each game, you could maybe rate your opponent how they use going first, how they use going second, that kind of a thing. I think that would be a really interesting experience.
I think a lot of people would hate it, but I think you're right. I think it would be really interesting.
Yeah, I could see that.
Steak.
Yummy.
Hi, Connor. How's it going?
We still got 7 minutes before we go. I should ask all the standard Will questions.
What have you been binge watching?
Yes.
Taboo.
Right, I keep meaning to watch that. It looks really good.
It is Tom Hardy.
Yeah.
It's dark, gritty.
Yep.
Brutal. It's everything I enjoy.
Yeah, sounds like my jam.
Yep. It's real good. I'd recommend it. 10 out of 10.
Cool. G, have you been watching anything lately?
We just finished The Good Place. That was fun.
I like that show's good. Ted Danson is fucking awesome.
And did you see that coming at the end?
Yeah.
I did not the first time.
Oh, really? Yeah. I kind of did. Yeah, it's a really good show. It's a really good sitcom-y kind of turn your brain off for a half hour.
It's a half-hour sitcom.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of the better half-hour sitcoms that are on right now. There's not a lot, so yeah. Good Place is really good.
Check it out.
What have I watched? I watched Big Mouth today.
Was
that new
good?
Netflix show. It's the cartoon one by Nick Kroll. And it's probably the most vulgar cartoon I've ever watched, including South Park.
Wow.
Like, yeah, it's bad. Well, pretty much the entire first episode was just cartoon penises everywhere. So
just 30 minutes of penises?
30 minutes of penises and kids swearing and, yeah.
It's like any War Machine tournament.
Yeah, it pretty much, yeah. What else did I watch? Anything? No, I don't think so. I think that's pretty much it. I've been watching much lately. New shows are coming back on though now, or the new episodes of old shows are coming back on. So
yeah, I've got Orville.
I haven't watched that yet.
Who's beeping? Bilac wants in.
Sure, put him on. Can you? Adam, or did we just kick Mike?
I think we may have just kicked
Did we
him.
just kick Matt off?
Yeah, you did.
Nice. Bye. Where's Matt?
You can add him to group call. Who's that guy?
Mike called.
That was Mike.
I didn't press the right button. So he didn't get added to the call. Just hung up on him.
Jesus Christ.
Is that 2 episodes in a row now?
Yeah, I think so. No, it's 3. I think it's 3.
3 episodes in a row that Mike has tried to call in just before the cast, and we've literally just hung up on him.
I mean,
That's good.
seems fair.
Good podcasting. I enjoy
cast.
it.
Good cat.
Top quality.
We're fucking professionals.
So,
Wait, your wife's a professional?
Wait, I said we, not me.
Wait, was I not supposed? Never mind.
Jesus Christ.
so
Anyway,
And then that happened.
sorry, Marbles.
how about that Haley 3 Trencher theme, huh?
Gravediggers?
So good.
Is it?
Yeah, it's real good.
It was real good before it was a theme. Now
Yeah,
it's a
now
theme.
it's even better.
Now it's a theme.
Do we know what's going into CID next, or is that kind of up in the air?
Gators are current CID.
Yeah.
And then I think with Crix is after that with it's the Shard Island
Yeah.
CID.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool.
When they take a baseball bat to
More
everything you
Christmas,
know
yeah.
and like about.
Yeah. No, they're not going to. They're
You don't
not.
think so?
I could see Denny maybe taking a little bit of a.
Well, she
a little-
shouldn't be
little-
in it, should she?
No, but they've added models before
It's true.
who've needed adjusting during that particular faction's.
I don't think Privateer Press plans to adjust Ghost Fleet or Denny, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
I'm not an expert on this. Like, maybe they will. I have no idea. But my
Yeah.
speculation is they won't adjust these things. Instead, they'll probably attempt to adjust them by adjusting the meta,
Other
would be
things,
my
yeah.
guess.
Well, Pagani said quite a while ago
She's
when
fine,
people
deal
were
with it.
complaining about Ghost Fleet, suck it up and adjust, basically.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yep.
It's what we did for years.
Yeah.
I don't know why this is strange and hard to figure out.
Yeah.
I mean, I could talk about that a lot.
Well,
So, whenever there's anything that's strong
wait,
in a
before-
meta,
before you get
It's-
into it, we're going to have to start the cast in 1:40. And I'm not even going to be able to slow you down in 1:40.
that's fair.
So,
that's
so I
fair.
got to start the cast. We'll do the opening. Then I'll ask you one question, and then I'll sit back and get a drink, and then I'll come back and ask you a second question, and then we'll call it a night.
George, you know me so well.
Do you think Patomantis asked if maybe they would maybe in the Crick CID for the Shard Island Pirates add in some Merc Pirates as well?
Interesting.
Just
Only if they can be taken.
well, most of them can.
Interesting.
I think we'll see the Devil Shadows Mutineer go in, like obviously
Right.
go into CID because they're part of the theme.
They're part of the theme, yeah.
I don't expect Merc Pirates to go into a CID until much later.
Yeah.
They really need one,
They
especially
do.
the Italian charter.
Yes.
I'm a big Pirates fan. I'm a huge Pirates fan.
Okay, the finger is about to go up for the start. We've got about 45 seconds here. So you're aware of finger in the air means quiet on the set.
I can't see you.
Oh, that's right. That's hilarious. Oh, you can see the opening, though.
Yeah.
So
But it's
until you're
delayed,
on
right?
camera, shut the hell up. No, he's seeing it live on Skype.
Oh, okay.
So there isn't the Twitch delay.
Professional.
Yeah.
What happened there? Because it never used to be like that.
I added the XSplit output as a camera
Oh.
because you can do some interesting things with that, and somehow it got set as the default camera for
Whoops.
Skype, and I just haven't fixed it. All right, here we go.
Recording live from the E. Haley Memorial Studios, straight out of Elmont, Ontario, it's time for This Death Clock Has 60 Minutes, your one and only weekly Warmahordes news broadcast. It's 8 p.m. Wednesday night, the beers are cold, the news is fresh, and the death clock starts now.
Welcome, everybody, to This Death Clock Has 60 Minutes. So, as you may have noticed, This is not Will telling you weird and wonderful things.
Or are noticing.
Or I hope they noticed. Yeah, we have yet again dumped Will somewhere deep in the wilds, and I think he has to... Does he have to, like, kill an elk and bring it home or something?
Yeah, I thought it was a jackalope this time.
Oh, that's going to take him forever.
He's not that fast.
Yeah.
A jackalope.
So, this week I will introduce the people that are hanging out with us tonight. First, as always, I guess we should go back to the Ringo of the band.
There's only two of us, and I'm still Ringo?
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
It's sad, isn't
wow.
Yeah,
whatever.
it's pretty bad.
That's fair. It's sad, but it's also fair.
You could always be Yoko if you'd like.
Oh, God, no. No.
So, Jason, how was your week in War Machine?
Oh, yeah, that's right. We played games and stuff.
Yeah.
I think I just got the one game in this week. Yeah, just the one.
Just the Monday game?
Yeah, I played Bilac.
I'm sorry.
I play. So is Bilac. I was playing Scar 1 Black Industries into Chromac and all the Tharn. A few Tharn anyway. And
so somebody brought Tharn on purpose.
Yes.
Okay.
He's probably regretting that though, because I think I lost a Slayer and a Ripjaw. And that was pretty much it. And I ended
why'd you have a Ripjaw with Scar?
Dark
Industries. It was obviously free.
Dark Guidance, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Much better chance of critting on that armor pierce.
But why do you need an arc node?
They're free.
Free arc node.
Free armor piercing arc node.
Scavengers, Jason. Scavengers.
I don't have any yet. Don't own any scavengers.
They're so scary.
Yeah,
that's
I'm gonna have to
that's
get
a good reason not to have them. And joining us today is, of course, Matt, and I'm not going to make up a random last name for you.
Oh, shame, damn shame.
McSprings.
McSprings. Is that
you
what we're
can call
going
me
with?
whatever you like, baby.
McSexy Pants.
Sexy pants. There we go.
That's only on Fridays.
Okay. So, how was your games of War Machine this week?
I mean, I had the Death Plague, so I got to experience what it's like to play War Machine in a sensory deprivation tank, essentially. I couldn't hear because my ears were congested. I couldn't breathe, and I was so congested my eyes were watering. It made doing things really, really challenging. The highlight of it is I got some really cool assassinations with Kane 3 and Leia Lee's Resistance. When you have Mariners that walk 5 and then shoot another 15 with POW 19 guns, it's real hard to not just kill casters.
Yeah, that reach out and touch somebody will do a thing.
Yeah, I mean, I lost a lot of games. It turns out Armor 13 means that you just randomly die all the time.
Yeah.
Like, you're like, oh, I'm going to put my caster here. He's defense 21, camping 3, super safe. And then, like, you're like, oh, here's 2 electro leaps. Oh, I'll just roll really high. Oh, you're dead. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
But that has traditionally been Kane's problem. There's this stiff breeze out there with his name on it.
Yeah, it's real hard in Mercs, though, because at least in Signar, like, you have Arcane Shield and stuff like that to kind of bypass it. In Mercs, like, you have that rubble from the Leia Lee's Resistance, which is real good, until it's not very good.
Until there's nowhere else to put it. Well, we should start off with some news.
Do we have any news other than the main theme of our theme cast?
No, I was going to do a bit. Where,
oh shit!
Where
Sorry,
I fucked
that up.
Nothing. But yes, professional. As you may have noticed, themes have dropped. There's the last of the Grimkin models just came out last week.
True. Yep.
Old Witch, boys.
Yes.
2
So
/ 3.
good. So good.
I've heard she's good.
Everybody's Old Witches will be nosediving onto the table any minute now.
I heard they fixed that.
Yeah, that was only okay. So that was an issue mainly in the lock and load batch, but there are still some that suffer from it.
Yeah.
So be aware.
Is there any way to tell?
Yes. When she starts laying down on your base,
Jesus
you
Christ,
have a
Matt.
problem.
Before you buy the base,
There's zero way to tell before.
No, I mean, as far as I know, there really isn't any difference. You could check the color of the
resin
material it's made out of.
Yeah.
Other than that, there really isn't too much of a difference.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if that is the same material they made that eyelash out of.
I don't know, because it's pretty soft.
Well, I think it's actually not particularly soft, but it's a lot more rubbery.
Yeah, that base that comes with it, you can it's like
it's soft resin, right?
Yeah.
Like it's soft resin, just like the dread rots from the box set for Grimkin.
Yeah.
I don't know what they were thinking, to be honest. Like, those dread rots are the worst things I've ever dealt with that Privateer Press has produced, and this is from someone who has built multiple units in Nis Hunters.
Has anybody bought a box of the new ones?
Yes, I bought quite a few actually because I couldn't stand the old ones.
Are they better?
Yes, they're the standard resin.
Oh,
nice.
Okay. So it's literally just
the box,
that main box,
the army box.
Well, that is definitely good to know.
Yep.
I don't think there's really been much else from PP other than we're in the ramp-up time.
The CID stuff?
Well, hashtag fake rules are the same fake rules from last week.
No, they're updated.
No, but I mean, we're still in the Gator.
Yes,
CID.
we're still in blind water.
Yep. We're on the run up to Company of Iron.
Yep.
So they've been streaming a lot of Company of Iron.
Yep. 20 days? 21
Something
days?
like that.
25th it comes out.
Matt,
we know the Northkin CID is coming out soon, like the actual release in the next week or so, next 2 weeks.
Right on. Well, that's good. Some troll players will be happy about that,
Yep.
I'm sure.
Matt, Company of Iron. Any interest? You looking at it?
Company of Iron is really great I spend most of my time in this hobby doing tournament prep games and tournament games. I play roughly 9 games a week between, tournament prep and tournaments. Sometimes it's up to 13. And it's really hard for me to find time outside of those days to play another game besides War Machine, like tournament mode War Machine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I am going to buy the Company of Iron box. It's a really great game. Like if I wanted to sit down and play with my girlfriend or introduce someone to the hobby who maybe isn't super fresh to it, or just do something really stupid, it's really fun. I'm sure it's going to be really popular at conventions when you scrub out early on. Or maybe you just scoop your face off and go play some Company Iron with your friends.
I really hope that it is a good game. I'm always looking for that Necromunda style game, but with the rules that I actually like.
Have you been watching any of the live streams that they've been doing?
I've watched a couple.
Yep. Yeah, it seems like fun. It seems like it'll be a fun pub game.
Yes. Yeah, that's one of the things that I'm looking forward to is that...
I mean, it doesn't really take any less time than a game of standard War Machine. Like, they try to advertise that it does, but there's so much that happens in a turn. Like, watching their games, obviously, they're like 3-4 hours long because they're talking, having fun, doing narrative stuff. But, I mean, you're still doing multiple turns. It's probably going to take about an hour and a half to finish.
Yeah.
And like if you just want to push models around, have a good time, try some really dumb things, it's great.
Yeah. Cool. Alrighty. So that's all the news that's printed to fit. And we should move into the main section here.
Yeah, because we don't have show notes.
Nope.
Nobody did
no
show notes. So what's up?
Wow.
So
I think we should wander into the Themepocalypse that dropped. And if you would like to get in-depth about every single theme and have someone read the PDF to you, there's about 15 podcasts that'll do that for you right now. Yeah. So go check somewhere else.
Probably not this one.
We are going to, first of all, speculate wildly, and then we're going to give correct and or incorrect opinions loudly. But mostly this is going to consist of me poking Matt with a stick and then him blathering on for a long period of time.
And Jason drinking. Jason,
well, you're going to drink heavily. But I thought just to annoy everybody, we'd start with Crix. So
let's address the elephant in the room, shall we?
Well, I don't think it's an elephant unless somebody strapped a lot of daggers and whirling blades to the elephant.
So
and tough.
So anyone who thinks Crix is in a bad position or is middle of the pack or anything like that is just objectively wrong.
Yeah.
Crix is an incredibly powerful faction, and all of their themes are incredibly powerful. Like even before this new theme drop, Infernal Machines was the weakest, and it still was good.
Yeah.
That says something about how the faction is currently balanced. There's obviously some things that are really bad, and some things that just don't do very well in the current meta. And these new themes, mostly Black Industries, are really awkward. So I guess I'll talk about Black Industries first. For those who don't know, that's the Jack theme.
Mm-hmm.
For every 30 points of Warjacks you get a free 7-point Warjack. And all of your heavy Warjacks gain Carapace, which is +4 armor against shooting.
And free strikes.
It also... Excuse me?
And free strikes.
And free strikes, you're correct. So it allows Death Jack and Malice. It's a really solid theme. It only allows Cephalix units. Those are the only units you can have, and it only you can take like mechanics and War Witch Sirens. Pretty much your only solo selection. So
and your
this
free
theme
work.
doesn't really fix the main problem with Crix Jacks. So one of the things I talk about a lot when I talk about list design and stuff is that there's the idea of win more, which is like you can make something that's good better at what it's good at, so it wins the matchups it's already winning, or you can try to shore up weaknesses to make your bad matchups winnable. The problem with this is, like, sure, this makes Crix Jacks better into gun lines. The problem with that is, like, if you're playing Crix Jacks lists, you're probably playing them with Coven, which your stealth or your enemy only has 5-inch line of sight and is -2 to hit. So chances are you're already pretty good into gun lines unless they just ignore your entire defensive mechanic. And +4 armor on most Crix Jacks isn't that impressive. Like, being armor 21 Slayers is really good until you only have 7 boxes in your arms.
Yeah.
So, like, the main problem with Crix Jacks is that they tend to be lower POW and require not only focus to apply debuffs to targets, but also focus to have enough attacks to kill the target. So you have to spend twice as much to get the same effect as, let's say, a Khador heavy. Now, this isn't to say Crix Jacks are bad or anything like that. They're perfectly fine. The main problem with them is that they're very flimsy. They lose systems very easily, and they require a ton of focus investment. So this doesn't really fix that issue. What it does do is give you a perfect theme to run Stalker spam or Inflictor spam or any kind of really, like, egregious, terrible, horrible, scary spam list with just things that are already immune to shooting.
What about, what is it, the Harrower? Could you make an entire list that you put the caster behind a house, and then at some point during the game, like turn 3 or 4, your entire army pops up behind theirs?
Well, I think you're
not
thinking
talking
of
about the Helldiver, are you?
Helldiver.
Oh, that thing's terrible.
Yeah, they're terrible.
3 fucking
it's
inches.
Too slow to do anything.
Well, it is 3 inches, but if it's 3 inches and suddenly inside everything.
But when it pops up, it has to use its combat action or movement. It can't do both.
It can't do anything?
No, it's terrible.
It's bad.
Yeah.
What I really like this theme for are casters like Goreshade 1, where... So this is a really janky list that's actually really cool if you want to try it sometime. You take a bucket of Desecrators and Goreshade 1. He makes them stealth. He feats, makes Banes, so they all fuel themselves because they accumulate off the Banes he made. And then you have 100 points of Desecrators shooting every turn for free.
Yeah, that seems like a thing.
It's real good. It's a stealth gun line that's all armed 22 against shooting.
Yep.
So
it's real good.
I have heard a lot of people say the gun line is dead.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically
Will on Monday when he lost.
Well, I think there's a little bit of he really doesn't like Convergence and 872 shield guards. But I have heard other people say, well, with the terrain dead in the center and with shield guards out there and all the stealth and stuff like that we're seeing, that it's really hard to make an effective gun line.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing about gun lines, okay. At the start of Mark III, gun lines were all powerful, essentially. No one had shield guard themes. There was no terrain on the table, basically. You just would pick up armies from inches away, or you're playing Sloan from 16 inches away. You would just pick up 4 or 5 heavies, or just kill a caster. SR 2017 kind of changes that in a very meaningful way. So with the forest or house in the center, and like generally more line of sight blocking terrain on the table, it narrows down your avenues to guns, gives more counterplay. All the new shield guard themes punish gun lines even more. Are gun lines dead even after all of this? Most certainly not. It's about bringing casters that have tools now instead of bringing casters that just bring raw damage. So, like, this is why you're not seeing a lot of Kara Sloan, but you're seeing a ton of Kane 3. Because he puts down a mage sight, so he ignores the forest, he ignores the clouds, he ignores stealth. Then he feats, and then he kills your caster or your army. You're seeing a lot of wins of death, because trampling huge bases get guns to places that matter. Eyeless sight CRAs really are good, too. Gun lines aren't dead, but what a lot of people experience, especially in their local metas, and like you'll see this a lot on the Facebook groups, is people say like, oh, I played my gun line into this list, or I played my gun line into this situation, and I lost. I didn't have a chance. I couldn't shoot. I couldn't do this. But most of the time when you win or lose a game, it has very little to do with like your list, very little to do with a lot of, like, it has more so to do with the skill matchup. Because unless you compete at a very high level or a very low level, there's a huge skill gap generally between players. So, like, I mean, it's kind of mean to put it this way, but if you're a local player and you win every steamroller and you're like, I am a god of my local meta, the chances are you're an average player. You're an average player that happens to have good lists, or you're an average player in a meta that's pretty weak. When you get to a level where you're competing at national level things, that's when like the quality of your list, the quality of like the amount of practice you have with your list. Like when you say, oh, I have to play Osram into this anti-gun line, but I can totally win it. At a local level, that's mostly because you're confident in your skill to play your list and you're not confident in your opponents. At a national level, it's because you have 150 games with that matchup and you're 100% certain of what he needs to do to beat you and you know how to counter it.
Yeah, I always have stuck in my head what Banky said to me, and he said, I don't even feel comfortable with a caster till I've got 100 games under my belt with them.
Yeah, that's definitely something that I try to adhere to as much as I can. A lot of the times if you hear me talk about matchups, I don't say things like this feels really like I don't say this is good for this caster or stuff like that. I'll say things like if I were playing this list, I feel like I would be advantaged. Or this feels like it would be good for me. And that largely has to do with the fact that I play 9 games a week with various casters, lists, and factions. And so when I show up to a tournament or I play a friendly game or whatever, and I have to put down models on a table, I know what I'm expecting my opponent to do. And unless he either performs in a way that I didn't expect, or does something like just completely, I'm confident of how the game will unfold. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so when we talk about gun lines, performance, and stuff like that, that's what a lot of it has to do with. So if you're playing Kara Sloan up until SR 2017 and just shooting your opponents off the table, like, playing shooting fish in a barrel, so to speak, you weren't really experiencing what the game's actually like. Then your opponent brings out Destruction Initiative, or they bring out Forges of War, or they bring out a forest placement list or whatever, and now all of a sudden you're actually dealing with what matchups are actually like, where you have to rely on your experience and your guile to play around certain aspects of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, so realistically, you feel that it's not really gun lines that are the thing that has died. It's the style of gun line that people used to play has died, and it has really raised the skill cap to the place where people they can't get away with what they used to get away with.
Yeah, I think that I actually had a conversation about this morning in our little OTC team chat, where I kind of decided, like, they were basically telling me that gun lines are dead, and I kept asking, like, why in this matchup is a gun line bad? Could someone give me an explanation of how that game proceeds in a way where I can't shoot? Yeah. And I kept going through this over and over and over again, where, like, why do I need more heavies in this matchup? Can someone explain to me? Like, and that's to me, like, imperative to the conversation. Like, it's about having tools. Every game of War Machine ever is about having tools. You either have the tools to deal with the list that's in front of you, or you don't. It's not about having 100% of the tools. It's about having enough tools that you have a way to win, right? Mm-hmm. Because if you say you have every tool for every matchup, that's unrealistic. If you have one tool for 80% of the matchups and some tools that cover the other 20, then that's great. But yeah, gun lines aren't dead. Casters that just sit there and shoot are dead.
Yeah. All right. So that was a lot of Dark Industries. What about pirates, Jason?
Shard pirates.
Well, there's two. There's
Scourge of the Broken Coast.
There's the Slaughter Fleet and the Scourge of the Broken Coast.
Slaughter Fleet, I don't...
Is it dead until we get model?
I think I don't think it's dead. I just don't think it's up to snuff with maybe the other themes until the other models come out. Matt probably...
It's not very good in the meta now.
Right.
I'm not going to comment on how good or bad the contents of the theme are, but I will say that it needs a CID.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And it will get one.
Apparently.
Yep.
What about the
Scourge of the Broken Coast?
Love it.
All the Satixis. Oh.
Love it. Wrong Guy Snapjaw, double Raiders, Min Blood Witches for ambush.
Oh god, yes.
Scavarus, Erebus, 2 Death Rippers.
Yeah.
It's literally and Crows, Max Crows Cutthroats.
Yeah.
It's literally the pre-themed Scavarus list with 6 free points and Pathfinder on all your Statixis.
Yeah. So you don't have to choose between Whipping Winds and Pathfinder anymore. You just take Whipping Winds all the time.
Ooh, I don't like that.
Yeah.
I don't like that at all.
It's real good. It's
You don't like Def 16 Statixis?
Well, I own TEPs, so I don't really worry about it. But...
Yeah.
If our regulars and Lealese weren't like so focused in my head, I'd be playing the shit out of that. There's basically no reason not to play it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really good.
So are there any let's Jason, have you gone over most of the themes?
I've gone over some. A lot of them in this very small meta in which we play.
Yeah.
I see a very small bracket of factions. So
I've looked at all the factions
that matter to me. Yes.
Is there any theme you've come across that you just have no idea what the hell's going on? Like, why is this a theme?
No, not really.
No, none of them are like, what was he thinking?
I
know you have one, Matt.
Yeah.
That's why I was asking Jason first.
No, no. Let's ask Matt.
The Wolves of Winter theme for Khador is really awkward.
Is that the Man of War theme?
No, the Wolves of Winter are the Doom Reavers and the spray douche guys.
Grey Lords.
Grey
Lords, right.
I get the theme they're going for. I really do. I understand it. But like, who was sitting down there and was like, you know what we really need is a theme of weapon masters and spray guys. Like the weapon masters are overpriced and need a lot of things. The spray guys are overpriced and need a lot of things. So clearly we should combine them into one theme.
Where nobody's going to get what they need.
And no one gets the bonuses they need. And no one wants to, like, people want to play it, but it's nothing in it compensates for anything the list. Yeah,
I have Doom Reavers. I can see Doom Reavers from here sitting on a shelf.
I've never seen those Doom Reavers on a table.
No, because you literally can't.
It's the same thing with the Man of War theme. That needs to go through CID. It's obviously planned to come up.
Man of Wars have some model releases coming up too, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. They need a CID, and the theme needs a CID. That whole thing needs a CID. I mean, they said they're going to, so that's good. The pirate theme for Mercs needs a CID. I don't know what they were thinking. Let's release a worse Irregulars.
Yeah, if it was just Irregulars with those models, it would be better.
Well, it is just Irregulars. Irregulars is better than there's honestly about 80% of the themes that released in this dump need CID. Luckily, that's what are going to go into CID in the coming months.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the Themepocalypse is much overrated, and there's a lot of salt, and there's all kinds of things. I really like it. I'm really hype about all the themes that came out. I think they're really great. But one of the biggest changes about it all was the allowance of mercs or minions if you're a War Machine or a Hordes theme, respectively.
Yeah.
There's some really good things about this and some really not so good things about this. First of all, if you're a War Machine faction, you only get access to mercenaries, which can make it kind of awkward when you're not allowed to take Nis in Khador, as an example. There's some other things. I mean, some of this could be bugs with War Room. There's a ton of them. But a lot of the time, what you really want when you take mercenaries is multiple mercenary solos. Mm-hmm. So, like, when you're looking for a Ghost Fleet answer, sometimes you're looking for Iana and Holt and some more magic guns. Or, like, you're looking for Alexia, too. Or you're looking for tools for other matchups. But only having access to, like, one of the solos you need to make that matchup playable doesn't really fix the overall problem. It just kind of what's the best way to word it? It just kind of it puts a little plug in it and gives you hope. But that hope isn't always enough to actually follow through on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
What it does allow you to do is create some truly abusive combinations that are just amazing to play and super fun. Like Satixis with Rongai Snapjaw, Scavarus, Crow's Cutthroats. Like, that list is like the dream list. That is one mercenary, one minion, or one mercenary solo, one minion, mercenary solo and unit. You get Rongai Snapjaw and you get Crows, and you just live the dream.
Yeah.
But then when you look at like other themes and you're like, what I really want here is Ragman and Orin, because I need Bone Shaker so I can RFP leader models. And I need either Arcane Vortex so I don't lose all my Colossal, or I need Chain Lightning so I have a source of magic attacks. But you can't take that. And there's no unit that allows you to do that either. Like, there's no stand-in unit that gives you that magic attack or that gives you that RFP. And I think that's a little bit of the problem. Yeah.
Grubnuts is mentioning that Nis are minions and mercs.
Yeah, so like I said, it's probably a bug with War Room when I was building lists. But I was unable to take Nis in my Jaws of the Wolf lists. I don't know if that's a bug or if that's intentional.
Yeah.
Sounds like a bug.
Speaking of Jaws, didn't it lose the anti-AD tech?
Yeah, this is probably a change for the better. Ravens of War and Jaws of the Wolf lost the no AD, and they instead changed it to no ambush.
Mm-hmm.
No AD is a bit oppressive. There's some factions when they lose AD, like let's talk about the Trenchers CID as an example, or Trencher Theme Force.
Yeah.
When your entire faction loses AD, it's kind of punishing.
Yeah.
Instead, losing ambush is it makes it better into some matchups, but it also allows the list to not have to clump up as much. I mean, especially because it's a theme force that enables ambush, so you have ambushes, your opponent doesn't. It gives you a slight advantage.
Mm.
Yeah, I thought it was. That was one of the things I really liked when I was playing.
Yeah. Take that ambushing, drudges, you bastards.
Yeah. Well, it will be nice for that. It means that you don't have to
clump into the center of the board.
Yeah, but I always kind of did that anyway.
Yeah.
With Jaws.
Yeah, I mean, for Jaws,
For
this is
Jaws,
probably just strictly a nerf.
Yeah, like I mean, they were already doing that. So, but I understand why. It's the standard taking things away problem. Whenever you're removing something from your opponent's list as opposed to adding stuff to yours, it always feels worse.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. But I mean, like, I think a large part of this, it's fine. Like, you should, because of the nature of the game, you should never be too attached to any like one trait of your faction, right? Like,
Yeah.
If you're sitting there like, oh, the only thing that's like I love about this faction is that this theme is oppressive to people who have advanced deploy. That's probably the wrong thing to be focused on. Like, that's not what KDOR is about. KDOR isn't about that. It's about being numerically superior and being just a great faction in general.
Yeah. No, what I liked it for was it felt like I had more time. And that was one of the things that KDOR Jacks need is more time to get where they're going.
I think that's fair. I think that's definitely fair.
Like that was the feeling. Now, I completely understand why it got removed, and I am not like horribly upset or anything. It was just one of those like, yeah, that's probably a problem.
Yeah. Well, I'll never forget when I played Jaws of the Wolf into a circle list, and I denied AD on both units of stick peoples, mannequins.
Yeah.
And the Sentry Stones with the UA and the little guys, and he had to deploy them all the way back in his deployment zone, and then I had top of one, and I was playing Harkovich, and I got up the board, and he's like, oh, so I literally can't do anything this game for the first 2 turns, because I have to walk this unit up, then walk it up again, and then I'm going to be in range. And I'm like, yeah, that's kind of a problem for your unit that's supposed to be your advanced advanced force.
Okay, so the last thing we're going to do on this topic is an interesting one. Is there a place for the non-themed list anymore?
I think so, personally.
You think there is a combo good enough or a list good enough that you forego the 10 to 16
bonus
points?
I mean, it depends too on what you're talking the particular faction as well, I guess, because of the bonuses.
Well, any faction. I'm not locking this down.
Yeah, I think it depends. I think it depends on the faction, honestly, and probably the models. Legion at this point, I would probably still take things out of theme.
Well, even now that you can have Hellmouths?
Only in certain themes, though. I want Hellmouths and Oracles, and I can't get them. I miss my Abbey 2 Hellmouth.
Is it worth giving up Oracles?
The 2 free...
I think
Hellions?
Yeah.
Is it worth giving up Hellions?
I honestly think, yeah, depending on the matchup, yeah.
Okay.
I think,
what do you think, Matt? If
you have a plan that only works outside of theme, then I guess, like, maybe, but it's so much harder to create a game plan and have it be good outside of theme than it is to do it in theme. Because when you're running out of theme, it's not only are you now points down, like 17 to 22 points down in some cases, like a quarter of your list down, essentially, you're also deprived of all the benefits a theme would give you. Like, that is just a monumental disadvantage you're putting yourself at, especially when most of these themes are not that restrictive. Like, in Legion, there's an argument to be made for it, but the counter argument is usually like a theme and list is just usually, or a list and theme would just be better, more powerful. I'm not an expert on that. Like, I don't. I'm sure there's someone there who has like a crazy win record with a theme out of, like, with a list that's out of theme, and he's running all this cool shit and does all this cool tech. But it's hard for me to imagine a matchup where you could walk in 22 points down and feel like that's a good matchup.
22 points is a lot, though. Most of the themes you can't get that many points.
Well, I don't know about that. So most of the new themes, they're pretty egregious in terms of free points. So, like, of course they nerfed the Legion theme oracles. They nerfed heavy metal, so now that you only get them for every 30 points of warjacks or war beasts. So that theme you only get
14,
7, 7, and 4. So you only get 19 free points in Legion still. Heavy metal, you're 15 free points or 12 free points. 6, and 4.
Yeah.
Okay, so 16 free points. Sorry. Yeah. Okay, so in the Mercs theme force of regulars, if you have 4 free solos, it very easily adds up to 22. Or 22 or 20 or 19. So let's say that there's a margin between 15 to 20 points that you're playing down. That's a heavy or 2 in some factions.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like walking in, leaving a heavy in your bag is an advantage?
Well, not as an advantage, but an acceptable loss to get something else.
Yeah.
That's the question. Is there something out of theme that is good enough
that's going to make your list rounded enough that you can take on 2 different lists of somebody else's?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I have a hard time imagining a world where I would want to play 2 out of theme lists in a tournament setting. I mean, you have a pairing.
Not necessarily 2 out of theme.
No.
I'm just saying.
No. Sorry, let me rephrase it. You have a pairing. Your pairing has to be able to cover what your expected matchups are, right? So, like, if you have a list that you're like, okay, this is my generalist list, and this covers like these factions in a general sense, or these types of lists in a general sense, and then I have a second list which is specialized at dealing with specific lists. With the current theme forces, it's really hard for me to imagine a world where that generalist list doesn't exist while still being in theme. Can you think of a case where that's true?
No, this was pure supposition.
Yeah.
I don't have something in mind, like in my back pocket or anything.
Okay, so let's say that it is true. Like, let's say you can create a list out of theme that enables you to cover a specific matchup you need to cover better than a list in the theme would. The question would be then, do you feel that having that in your pairing makes your pairing stronger or more vulnerable to other matchups?
Yeah.
That's a lot of the argument for the Dark Host Ghost Fleet pairing, actually. This is actually a really good point. Is every faction has tech that they can put into their list, but it requires people to play out a theme, and having that tech makes the rest of their matchups worse. So if one of your lists is like so teched out and like has this combination for like 2 or 3 specific matchups, but that means that you can't cover any other matchups with that list. That means your pairing is way worse.
So Mark II, everybody had a Crix drop, and then a list for everybody else.
Yeah, and that's largely because their quote-unquote Crix drop was about the style of Crix list that was being run, which was dude spam, right?
Yeah, as a general.
So so you had to cover like 60 dudes or 100 dudes, or like the most egregious case, which was like 90 Mechanothralls or something.
Yeah.
And it was about covering a dude spam list. And like they called it the Crix drop because Crix was the most violent, like the worst offender of that, but it still covered a lot of matchups, right?
Yeah, it did.
Because Mark II was much more infantry heavy. We didn't have this like meta where we had to sit here and be like, well, I need to cover 8 heavies and 100 dudes. We had to cover 3 heavies and 100 dudes, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay, and one last thing. Do you think it's worth them creating a generic theme? So the theme would say something like, for every 30 points of infantry, you get 1 solo. For 30 points of warjacks, you get, 1... Or
like irregulars.
UA. Yeah, like irregulars, but absolutely generic. Any faction can take it. And
well, I think
as a way to open up the theory crafting, so that people didn't feel like they were playing down in points, to be able to build a sort of out of theme list, as it were.
I think that the irregulars theme is the irregulars is one of my favorite themes, because it enables me to play the entire faction. That is not what a theme force should be.
No.
That is distinctly bad for the game. it's okay in mercs because like mercs don't get the ability to take merc units, or you know what I mean, like they don't have the access to units from Signar in exchange for other people being able to take mercs or whatever. But I think having generic themes like that is actually pretty terrible, because like it just puts you back to where you were in Mark II, where you were a have or a have not. You either, I mean, okay, this is the big problem with themes, and like I don't want to talk at length about this, but basically up until the recent theme dump, there was like two tiers of themes. You either had a really good tier that enabled you to define the meta and like be like a huge scary army, or you had shit tiers that made it not worth playing. There was very few tiers that were in the middle. So like you either were like Haley 2 heavy metal, or you were like the Keepers of the Flame tier in Menoth. Like you're just like, why is that a thing? Or like Band of Heroes. You're like, these themes aren't bad, but they don't really have a home in the meta as it is, right?
Yeah.
So this is having like themes that encompass large portions of the faction, like the Menoth theme, Faithful Masses, encompasses an extremely large portion of the of Menoth. It's like pretty much everything except for Exemplars and like the Daughters of the Flame. Like it's everything except for Exemplars and Flamebringery people.
Yeah.
It's when you build lists with that theme, you're like, oh, cool, I can do whatever I want, and now all of my Jacks of Hand of Vengeance too. That's probably not okay. That's probably something like it's a fine theme for us. It's really good. It's probably balanced. But having like that no restriction just means that you can take the best of the best in your theme, and you're not punished for it. You're rewarded for it, which creates a power curve between your good themes and your medium themes that are like leaps and bounds of difference, right?
Yeah.
So like a really good example of this would be heavy metal and not heavy metal, like up until recently, right? Where like you saw only heavy metal lists because it was such a good theme. And then now after it's been nerfed and all this stuff, okay, so now we like start seeing other themes come around. Like that's the ultimate goal, is to have other themes give you tools, stuff like that. But there's just such a huge difference between a theme that allows you to take what you want to take and be really good and have all the tools, and then a theme that doesn't let you do that. Like why would you ever play Storm, like, well, let's say not whatever like shitty theme that's like restrictive when you could play a theme that allows the entire faction?
Yeah, so the generic theme would just be horribly broken no matter what we did.
I mean, it would be have free solos for playing whatever you want to play. It's probably be broken.
All right, so we're going to leave Themepocalypse there. We've managed to sort of beat the crap out of it. As I said, if you were looking for some particular theme,
probably check out the Facebook page of that particular faction.
Yeah, if you want to mine the salt mines, flip over to your favorite faction and just absorb that. If your fries are a little light, you can just put them near the monitor. I'm sure you'll get more than enough sodium. But what we're going to do is move on to a little bit of a little round table. Two of us are people who work in our local metas to sort of try and generate good to play experiences and move our metas towards being more competitive as well as having lots of fun. And I want to talk for a couple of minutes about ways to help your meta get better. Now, Jason.
Yeah, that's me.
Yes.
I'm here.
You haven't participated in the larger Ottawa meta in a while, outside of a couple of games at Out of the Box. Our local meta is peppered with newer people. We tend to have less casual people, or more casual people, less tournament-oriented people. Yeah. And we have a constant stream of one or two new guys.
Yeah.
In our local meta, are there any things that you really wish we did to sort of help the meta grow?
No, I don't think so. I think We do a journeyman once a year. We advertise, come out and play. I think everything we do is fairly new player friendly. We've had a new player, well, not a new player, but a guy who hasn't played since early Mark II show up at the pub a couple weeks ago, and he seemed to have fun, and we played a couple learning games and offered to lend him models if he needed them. And I think the War Machine community in general is very friendly to new people. I'm sure there are exceptions to that in certain metas. Ours, I don't think, has that issue. I think I don't see what else we could do to approach other players. Really, it's a very niche thing, and I think we do everything possible, including I know you go to cons, set up tables, and try to wrangle in people to check it out, and I think, short of that and just advertising and being there and being friendly to people walking by while you're playing, there's not a lot you can do. People will take interest if they see it and it's something that they would normally be interested in anyway.
Now, as a secondary thing, how do you think, is there anything that you would like to see locally to help our locals get better at the game?
I'm probably not the best person to ask that to, because I'm not a competitive player.
Well, see, that's why I want the opinion, because
right.
I'm looking for someone who is not personally looking for that.
Okay.
Because Matt and I are both tournament-style players. I won't say I'm in any way good, but I tend to play in a tournament style.
Yep.
I tend to pack my bag with 2 lists, and those are the lists that I am practicing.
Right.
And they tend to be tournament-style lists.
Yep.
But that's not something you do. Like, you as a player tend to do.
Right.
But to get better at this game, there are a bunch of things you can do.
Yep.
But a lot of those require a lot of personal work.
Personal work and time.
Yes.
Neither of which I have. I say I am a non-competitive player, but at the same time, I wouldn't mind being a competitive player. I just have realistic expectations about the amount of time I can put into the game.
Yeah, you're not a 9-game player. You're
no.
1 to 3 game.
There's
player.
absolutely zero chance that I could get that many games in during a week. To try and lure. Or not lure, I guess, but to try to bring somebody over to that side, I think they kind of have to have that competitive bone in their body anyway.
If I can just interject real quick.
Absolutely.
I think that, at least in my experience, what usually ends up happening as you get more and more invested in War Machine. So War Machine has a really steep learning curve, right? Like the difference between someone who's playing their first game and someone who. Sorry, let me rephrase it. The difference between someone who plays once a month and it goes to tournaments and doesn't really know that much versus the guy who goes 2-2 at a tournament or 3-1 at a tournament and has a good bit of game knowledge is miles apart. Like, it just there's so much to learn about the game, and I feel like there's like a natural step that happens with War Machine as you get more and more invested in accumulating that game knowledge. You get more and more invested in having results that represent that game, like that investment, right? So like when you're sitting there and you're like, man, I really want to understand how this works. I got to build a list that counters this, or I got to do this. And then as you start getting better, you start looking for ways to validate those results. And that validation drives you to become more competitive and look for more victories, right?
I agree and disagree at the same time. I think, speaking personally for myself, I love learning as much about the game as I can, and I do sit and I dojo lists constantly in War Room, but at the same time, after playing for almost 3 years now, I don't feel the lure towards competitive play.
So you think you have You think you have the will but not the time?
Yeah, I think my biggest desire is not to embarrass myself.
So what's driving you is mostly I get so few times to show up.
And I think
I would really like to not just be a complete Muppet when I do it.
True, yeah. That, and at the same time, I freaking love the game.
Mm-hmm.
I want to learn as much as I can about it, and I want to do well. I want to, I love the system. I love the models. I love everything about it. So sitting down and dojoing lists and learning the things I can
is what you can do.
Is what I can do. Yeah, exactly.
That's interesting.
So
sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to literally throw this at you. You are currently working with your local meta to try and up the local level of skill in the area.
Yep.
Competitiveness, let's say.
Yeah, so a long time ago, I actually talked to Tim Banky about this, and I said, hey, the Montreal meta is really weak. I don't know if people who are familiar with this. A few years back, the Montreal meta was basically dead. That'd be the best way to put it. We had no real good competitive players. It was pretty bad. And the Ottawa meta had a couple really good players, or like one or two really good players. And I would sweep events in Montreal and then go to Ottawa and have to play against Marc-Andre and Francesco and, win some, lose some, right?
Yeah.
Then what ended up happening was, obviously meta balance shifted a little bit, but I talked to Tim and he basically brought up a really good point about how if you want good practice and you want people that have like the same ideals or like value the game and want to get better, you have to kind of make your community the way you want it. So what I started doing at game nights, and like this is a really big thing for me, is instead of telling people, like this is the big thing in the War Machine community, anyone who's been a part of it for any amount of time knows this, is that players like to speak in absolutes.
Yes.
They like to say things like I win this matchup, or this caster's the best, or things like that, or the theme force is great, or whatever. They think they think and speak in absolutes. They use their empirical evidence and whatever math fantasy world they live in to justify an absolute version of an event.
Unplayable trash.
Yeah, unplayable trash. So the first thing I did is I made an effort to change my perspective on the game. This is the first thing I did is I sat down and I said, instead of speaking in absolutes and instead of having these really strong black and white opinions, I'm going to say things like, I feel that this matchup goes this way, but hey, we should play it out. I feel that that list probably wants this little thing in it. Because now I'm no longer I'm no longer being confrontational. I'm no longer directly approaching and like contradicting someone's narrative, right? I'm instead offering my feelings on the matter, and I'm giving them in a way that's constructive. That was the first thing I learned about like actually having meaningful conversations in your meta. Is when I encountered a lot of the newer players, they didn't want to hear what the absolute best was. What they wanted to actually know was like, what do you think I could have done a little bit better? Like, how would have you handled the situation? And I feel like that's the first steps I took to making my meta a little bit more competitive, was getting people to think and talk about the game in that kind of way. Instead of saying like things like, well, I won this matchup because my caster was better, I had a better list. They started saying things like, I feel like I won because I played the scenario better. That is a very big perspective change, because now they're critically thinking about how the game goes. And critically thinking about that is the number one step to getting better. Being critical of like the decisions you make, whether you win or lose, is the most important thing. Like, I can't tell you how often someone will win a local tournament or like go undefeated at a local tournament, and you'll see it in the Facebook groups, you'll see it like with your friends, where they'll say things like, oh dude, I must be the best, like this list is the best because I went 4-0 at a steamroller. And it's like, dude, that's not, first of all, it's not representative of almost anything. Second of all, what would be more impressive for me to hear after that conversation would be, I can't believe I went 4-0 after making these mistakes.
That is something I want to pounce upon, because one of the big things I think, and this is actually how you get better at almost any game, and it doesn't really matter what the game is figure out what you learn on a loss, and figure out what information you could possibly wring out of a win. I think figuring out what information you can get out of a win is really hard. That's the thing I find problematic myself. And
it's also hard to sit there and say to the guy that you just beat, what could I have done better?
I do that, and you get a lot of horrible looks.
Yeah.
But
go fuck yourself. That's what you could have done better.
Yeah, exactly. Play a game of hide and go fuck yourself. Yeah. But as a learning tool, you have to always be learning, and that's the thing. You have to stop thinking that, because I won 4 games with this, I've got this figured out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, unless you're playing Harkovich Kador, in which case. Just push those models.
Yeah, I mean, it's not real hard to win with Harkovich. You push your models forward, and we'll put Harkovich outside the kill box.
Yeah,
outside the kill box. that you guys heard it here first. That's our Harkovich tech.
So here's a question, just because there are guys like me who only get 1, 2, maybe 3 games a week if they're lucky.
Mm-hmm.
Is it possible to be competitive when you only get 2 or 3 games a week?
This is actually a really good thing. Talk to Bubba about this sometime. When I was
that would mean I'd have to talk to Bubba.
Sorry. For those of you who don't know, I'm not going to steal your question. I'm going to get to it in 5 sentences.
Yeah.
Setting a goal is setting a goal and making it public is the best way to make strides towards keeping that goal. Benke talked about this on Moose Machine not too long ago, and I've talked to him about it as well. But my goal personally is to go to the WTC. That is something I want to do, and it's my goal. And to do that, I've taken steps to get there. Bubba Dalton, who's already a WTC player, likes to talk. After discussing this with him and talking about how many games I play, he laughed and said, "You don't need to play that many games." He's like, what you need to do is have quality games over quantity games. Ooh. And this is the most important thing. If you play 3-4 games a week or 2-3 games a week, but every single one of them is meaningful and you learn something from it, that is much better than when I play 12 games a week and I at a tournament, I just raffle stomp through a list.
So, it sounds like the answer here is to play 2 games against Benke, as opposed to playing 100 games against Connor.
So that leads to another question.
Sorry, Connor.
is if you don't have the level of player in your meta that you can learn that extent from, is it possible to even be competitive?
So what you should try to do, this is actually a really big thing. If your only practice is your local meta and that's your only view of the world, you're going to suffer.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it's really important to go to conventions. Go experience the national level meta. It's so important to get outside of your little local, in one night a week pub thing. It's just because going to a few conventions gives you perspective. Maybe you see that, that Minions player that you crush every week only really suffers because, he's bad in his environment. Maybe he's really good in some other environment. Maybe you're really good in some other environment. Maybe that list you're like, oh, this list is the best, is terrible outside of that. There's just so much to be gained from competing against people not only not in your meta, but at a completely different skill level than you. There is a way to be competitive in a meta with unskilled players. The way is to make your meta skilled.
Yeah.
To work with them at getting better.
Yeah, so I think there are...
Poor George is stuck with a bunch of non-competitive scrubs.
Well, most of my problems are self-inflicted. Most of my wounds are self-inflicted in this case. Because I'll just talk to the Ottawa meta, because that's what I know.
Yep.
Is that we have within a 2-hour drive of here, we have Montreal and Kingston, right?
Yep.
We can get a different perspective
pretty
just
easily
by signing up for a tournament.
We're kind of spoiled here.
We are really, oh God, I connect with other organizers on a regular basis, and they're like, yeah, man, we had an 8-man. It was fucking awesome. We had everybody out.
I talked to my friends back in Halifax, and it's just like,
and you're
4 people come out tonight. It was great.
And you're like, yeah, I could get 16 to 24 in Ottawa, and then I could go to 30 or 40 in Montreal, or I could go to, a 24 or 26 in Kingston. And that's not even like big tournaments. That's just like monthly tournaments.
So in Montreal, we went from having a game night with 4 or 5 people to having 12 to 16 on a standard game night, and our tournaments from having 16 people to having to being over the cap at 24.
Are you guys throwing out free drugs there or something?
Apparently, when you work with your meta at getting better and you make your goals announced and common, and you talk with people and work with them, they actually want to play. It's insane, guys.
Weird.
I've never experienced this, but when you care about something and then make other people care about it, you care about things, and it changes the way the game goes, right?
So by make other people care, you mean you tie them down and threaten their families?
It turns out you don't have to do that.
Shit, I've been doing it wrong.
Yeah. With War Machine, it's really actually easy. If you can find a place for War Machine people to play, if you can create a space for them to be able to purchase models and have fun, it happens.
Yeah.
Because one of the great things about War Machine players is they want to play War Machine, and all you have to do is make it easy enough for them to play War Machine. And unfortunately, that's where we're going to have to end, because the death clock has actually gone off about 2 minutes ago. We are slightly over. And we did actually start on time. So
I think this is a good topic of conversation, though. I think we should probably revisit it at some point in time.
We definitely will.
Yeah.
So I want to thank Matt for coming on.
Thanks, Matt.
Pimp your Montreal
I love
meta.
you.
Pimp your Montreal meta. What are we going to next in Montreal?
So there's a tournament. Oh God, there's a tournament coming up. I'm running a tournament, October 28th. It's tentatively the 28th right now, but probably the 28th. We're expecting 30 people. So October 28th in Montreal. There's another tournament before then. Oh God. I know there's a bunch of tournaments in Ottawa. There's one this weekend at Out of the Box.
Yeah, there's the Out of the Box one on Saturday, and then
there's the 21st one, which is the Ottawa versus Montreal Invitational, round 2.
Those are both going to be really good tournaments.
War Machine Weekends on November 3rd.
Sweet.
October 28th, I'm running a tournament at L'Abyss in Montreal, as far as I understand. So there's that.
So you've been told.
so some Yahoo told you this. Okay. So
one more thing. I've talked with a lot of people. So the plan is, for those in Montreal, the plan is to run one tournament a year with a major cash prize. Will be divvied up to first, second, and third. This will be taking a percentage of all the winnings from the tournaments during the year. There's more details on that to come, but we're expecting lots of cash prize for the one invitational every year.
So, big cash prize to get in on. Lastly, I have to call out all the wonderful people who keep the lights on here and who allow us to do this wonderful thing we do. A big shout out to the Wizards Tower. Connor is there every Sunday to come out and play games. They have all your latest and greatest models. And if you are a Magic player as well,
you need not go anywhere else.
No, they have all the things.
All the things. I've seen their fucking drawers of cards.
Oh my
It's
God,
insane.
so many cards.
Yeah.
I think in our little local pub meta here, I'm going to try and run a draft soon.
Oh God.
So that'll be fun.
Cardboard crack.
Cardboard crack for all. Next up, of course, Muse on Minis.
Muse on Minis.
They provide the feed that we send this out on. They provide a lot of amazing tokens and widgets. And if John hears this, hopefully some of those new shiny buildings.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, I can't wait for that.
Has there been pictures of those
No,
yet?
they have only shown up at cons where John has personally been.
God damn it, John.
I know, eh?
Tease.
Yeah, and he's sponsoring us. We should get some.
Yeah.
And then last but not least, if you drink beer, drink some Crooked Mile.
Yep.
We hear they're getting their liquor license back.
It's only been a week. It feels like a year, but it's only been a week.
Year without the beer.
But
we swear they're getting their liquor license back, and then we can get some more.
Also, now probably more important than ever that all the themes are out. Go to WMHBattleReporter.com, plug in your games, check out and see maybe what's going on as far as statistics with your favorite casters.
Mm-hmm. Do we know what's coming up tonight?
No Troll Blood Scrum tonight. Everybody's traveling all over the place.
Horrible.
But they do have a backlog coming up soon, so there'll be lots of episodes being released.
Excellent. So hang around for that. So once again, I want to thank everybody for coming out and dice down.
Oh, wait, one thing.
What?
The Bubs is a little baby back bitch.
Oh! See, now he doesn't even have to.
Dice down.
Or are we
This
done?
machine and this death clock has 60 minutes. Is a
Yeah, I can
proud
just
part
cut
of
this.
the
I
Music
just-
Minis
don't.
Network.
I'll just
Podcasts
cut it
go
in later.
online every
Fuck it,
Thursday
I already
morning.
talked over this
You can watch
because
the
you
show
cut
live
it.
every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern on Twitch. And
As I
keep
was
in
saying.
touch with us on our Facebook.
Now
I'll
we
just
need
go
to-
back to the live camera because fuck ending stuff. I finally got the volume right. And do we want to play it? No. God
Matt's
damn it. Fuckers.
Matt started it.
I start everything. It's
Oh
fine.
my God, you asshats.
It's all good, George. It's all good. No one expects professionalism.
We've only been doing this for what?
It'll
since
sound
93?
professional when I cut it up and
Yeah.
plays.
Once
paste
you
it.
remove the idiocy.
Yeah, exactly.
so
That's
it's
what I
just-
do every week
So
anyway.
it's just an hour of silence that goes out every
yeah,
week.
yeah. No, that's not good.
Once you cut out all the idiocy.
Yeah, then there's nothing left.
Oh
Yep,
my
yep.
God.
It'll just
Oh,
be me
goodness.
yelling angrily.
So I should record raid?
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Oh shit! Thanks again for coming, Matt.
Yeah, no, it was fun. I always enjoy it.
We always enjoy you.
Oh
I-
yeah.
Ooh. I really enjoy having a platform to talk about things that, like, I feel like in the community a lot of people don't understand the steps it takes to get better, and they just like assume that they're good. Does that make sense? Like they're like, "Oh, I am the best because I'm the best."
Right. Yeah, I can. Yeah, I understand that.
And it's like it'd be really nice. It's really nice to have a platform to be like, "Okay, guys, let's remember, put your egos aside and think critically about how you could actually do better."
Yeah.
So why don't you just write a book called How to Be a Better War Machine Player?
I'd read that.
Like
See,
I don't
Probably
I
on the toilet, but I'd read it.
I don't necessarily mean an entire book, but you know what I mean.
A
Like
short story,
a couple hundred pages on that would, probably
couple hundred pages.
would actually be
That's
good.
a book.
That would require me to be a good War Machine player.
I don't think
I
that's
think you're
true.
pretty okay.
I don't think it's true. Knowing the steps and being able to execute them are very
different things.
things.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I know how to change the engine in my car theoretically.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I guess that's fair. I wouldn't mind. I
Fraser.
wouldn't mind.
I'd listen to the audiobook.
I wouldn't mind putting this down on paper somewhere, or at least having like an online avenue where I could talk about this stuff. That'd be. I think that's one of the things that's lacking in the War Machine
Make a
community.
blog.
Is,
Jesus Christ, man.
Oh.
yeah,
I'd
but
read
that
the Matt
requires-
McSprings blog.
Oh my god.
Just
Yeah,
That would be awesome.
just 40 logins, each one with Matt McSprings. Just cycle through each different person.
Oh Jesus.
you should
Oh,
though. Seriously though, would you have
Yeah,
time
but-
to do something like that?
Yeah, I have all the time in the world, dude. I play 12 games, 9 to 12 games a week. I have all the time.
All he has to do is cut out one game and.
I honestly think like there's I know there's quite a few podcasts in the world, but I honestly feel like there's not enough War Machine blogs.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Maybe I'm just terrible at finding them.
I find War Machine blogs hard to find.
Yeah.
It's because they don't get a lot of traffic, so they don't rank very high on Google.
Right.
So
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's almost. We should really. I feel that is something that we could help with. Like, there's a like for non-Canadians, they'll have no idea, but there's a show on CBC Radio that helps regular people find podcasts. And it's literally a radio show where once a week they feature a different interesting podcast that you should be listening to.
Nice.
And I think there's something out there. Like, we could definitely do a podcast where we get
gather up a bunch of bloggers.
Yeah, we get one blog writer on each week to talk about their blog.
Well, we had Jonathan last week.
Yeah. No, but you know what I mean? Like, specifically focus on their blogs.
Yep.
Well, I think just having a 10-minute segment, maybe like once every 2 weeks in an episode, where you just say like, "Hey guys, here's the blogs we're reading." Maybe like maybe you, Will, and Maelstrom over there, are all tasked with reading one blog post a week, and then maybe you have a 10-minute segment where you talk about like what you learned from reading it.
That's actually not a bad idea.
That's actually a really good idea. We might steal that. Fraser saying he has secrets he'll be sharing in November regarding this particular thing.
Keep it secret.
Keep it safe.
Yeah, I used to run a 40K blog way back in the day.
Oh, so you're already experienced with the whole writing thing.
I also do website design for a living and content marketing.
It's a really easy blog. It just tells you how many dice
to pick up.
How many dice I rolled, and then how many ones I rolled.
And how many of those you could reroll.
Yeah. I don't know. Running a blog is always an interesting thing. The problem with running a blog is that it's like an atomic winter. It's just this barren thing you have to essentially be doing for yourself, because you don't get feedback, you don't get any input. It's something you do for yourself.
Yeah, I always call it shouting into the void.
Yeah.
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 And I do enough of that on game night. I don't know.
And then you do it on raid night.
And I do it like 5 nights a week. Where I just yell things at people's faces.
Jesus Christ.
Or at their avatars, and then watch them do the exact opposite.
Yeah, like I'll be sitting there with my local players, and there'll be something like, "I really want to run the mammoth in this list," and I'll be like, I feel like the mammoth isn't as good as the 3 heavies it replaces in this list. But you should try it out." And then for like the next month, they'll be playing exclusively the mammoth. And I'll be sitting there like, okay. And then they'll be like, "I can't win with this list. This list is terrible." And I'll be like, "I feel like maybe it's the mammoth." But
have you thought about removing the mammoth?
And then they're like, "This caster's bad. I'm not playing this caster anymore."
Anyone sucks.
Yeah. I'm like, "Oh God, it's definitely not the mammoth. It's not the mammoth. I can't just say that though. I can't just be like, it's the mammoth, you idiot."
Well, you can, but then it sort of defeats the purpose.
Yeah, it's hard. There's actually some of the people from our little group of raiders watching this and messaging me.
That's awesome. Oh, by the way, we're doing Mythic tonight, right? Am I warming bench hard?
Yeah, we're doing Mythic tonight.
So I'm warming bench if everybody bothers to fucking show.
I mean, I expect we'll have a pretty good attendance tonight, but
okay, cool.
Can I come in and Leroy Jenkins?
You can fucking Leroy all over the place.
I want to come in and Leroy.
Our tanks don't even pull on timer. I don't even.
He can't even.
Yeah, I don't. If you ever want a really good experience, what it's like hearing me raid lead, just picture how you've seen me at a tournament when I'm really frustrated, with just a series of dice. Imagine that, but it's because people are just being either really ridiculously racist, or or just not doing any of the things they're supposed to do.
And then add that into an actual set of people who are specifically doing those things to cause more stress.
Oh my God. That sounds like something I could
they'll be like, I'm the highest DPS. He's not going to kick me. I'm just going to stand in all the stupid.
Yep. 100% accurate.
Oh, and by the way, you want to see my swastika tattoo?
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. You guys need different friends or something. That sounds terrible.
It's
Dude,
great.
I'm in it for the hilarious listening to.
The cancer I get cut out of me every week is real. Top quality cancer.
Yeah, top quality shelf. Top shelf cancer, baby.
Top shelf.
Yep.
All right, we're going to let you go. I got to get ready for raid. I got to send this guy home in the rain because he can't drive this drunk. And
it's true.
And I will see you on Discord.
In an hour?
Oh, less than an hour. I'll be on.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on tonight, guys. I had a lot of fun.
Thanks for coming, buddy.
See you, man.
I'll talk to you later.
Bye.
And we'll say bye-bye to all the peoples, too.
Bye-bye, all the people.